Ford Explorer was produced with 3- and 5-door bodies. The first version, called Sport and declared as a 4-seater, has a smaller base by 235 millimeters and is rare in our country. Salon. The 5-door interior is spacious both in front and behind, and in a large trunk, 1205/2310L. Some versions also have a simple folding seat for 2 passengers. The Explorer body resting on a spar frame will not show the biofrank traces of corrosion, but it has a weak point. In the gearbox area, you can often find a fatigue crack running across the body. You can see it better if you remove the upholstery of the floor, and over time it gives itself out with the knock and squeaks. There are 4 complete sets of the model: XL, XLT, Limited and Eddie Bauer. Even the basic XL version includes 2 airbags and alloy wheels, and the Limited series, which is widespread in Ukraine, includes a 4-speed automatic transmission, ABS, traction control, adjustable rear suspension, automatic front connection, rear differential lock, power steering, leather interior, power windows, sunroof, mirrors and seats, climate and cruise control. By the way, many owners note that in cold weather the interior warms up for a long time, especially its back. Visibility is also quite specific. It is clearly visible around, but due to the high hood, the dead zone in front is large. Engine. For the Ford Explorer, there are 3 V-shaped gasoline engines, a displacement of 4.0, 162 and 208 horsepower, or 4.9 liters, 213 horsepower. These units impress the owners with decent dynamics, which they provide to a 2.5-ton car, in the version with 208 horsepower, 10.9s to 100 km/h. Both 4.0-liter engines are 6-cylinder, and they differ in timing design. The less powerful one had a lower camshaft, and the second was equipped with 2 upper shafts, 1 in each head. Machines with the V-shaped 8, with a volume of 4,942 cubic centimeters. It is often called a 5.0-liter, are rare on domestic roads. All motors as a whole are considered to be quite durable. The need to replace piston rings and crankshaft liners arises no earlier than 200 to 300,000 kilometers. Timing chains on V6 units, 208 horsepower, last up to 100,000 kilometers, but their tensioners may need to be replaced even earlier. The kit costs about $200, but you can't delay the replacement. If the chain jumps over the teeth of the sprocket, damage to the valves cannot be avoided. The chain tensioner located in front of the block is relatively easy to replace. To access the rear chain of another row of cylinders, the engine must be removed. Motors, officially, can run on a 92 gasoline, but if necessary, they digest the 76th. The main thing is that gasoline is clean. To replace or flush the injectors, you have to dismantle the intake manifold, labor, $94. A submersible fuel pump lives up to 100,000 kilometers. If every 20 to 30,000 change the filter mounted on the frame, $30 with work. The main drawback of all engines is their appetite. Even the most careful drivers consume at least 12 L/100 km on the highway and reach 18 to 25 liters in the city. Transmission. Almost all Explorers are equipped with automatic transmissions, 4 or 5-speed, paired with the weakest engine, a 5-speed. Mechanics sometimes works. Some of the cars, from those intended for the American market, are equipped with a rear-wheel drive transmission. All the rest are all-wheel drive. There are 2 types of 4x4 transmission for the Ford Explorer, 3-mode and 4-mode. In both cases, you can use the automatic activation mode of the front end, using a multi-plate clutch when the rear wheels slip, and 2 modes of force locking of the center differential. Its role is played by the above-mentioned clutch, with an increased and reduced number of Razdaki. It is impossible to drive on a dry road in the locked center differential mode. This leads to failure of the clutch. On some machines there is a 4th position of the transmission control knob, purely rear-wheel drive, without automatic activation of the front end. In addition, many vehicles are equipped with a rear cross-axle locking differential. In some cars, it is turned on manually by the driver, in others, automatically. It is often not worth using this bulky car on bad roads, partly because of the mediocre cross-country ability, limited by the automatic and the large mass of the car, partly due to the fact that the transmission already gives the owners a lot of trouble. Often, the mechanism for turning on the all-wheel drive and the coupling for connecting the front axle located on the Razdaka fail. The seals of both boxes and axles flow. Leakage of the transfer case is another typical malfunction of the model. The The reason for this is often the gearbox shaft bearing, which jams and turns in its seat. The resulting radial play then damages the stuffing box. Usually the problem is solved by replacing the cover, labor $600. Due to a rundown battery, interruptions in the electronic transmission control unit are not uncommon. When buying an Explorer, it is also worth checking if there is water in the transfer case oil, which gets there when driving off-road through a breather. The resource of an automatic transmission does not exceed 160 to 180,000 kilometers, but many owners order it to live a long time even earlier. Skidding in snow or mud, work without spare parts, $875. Up to 300,000 kilometers, but the mechanics take care, but it is often let down by the clutch, due to the failure of which there are problems with gear shifting. To solve the problem, experts recommend replacing the basket assembly, both cylinders, and the connecting tube of the hydraulic drive. Suspension. The Explorer's undercarriage is American-style soft, but doesn't handle cross-country riding well. Front suspension. Torsion bar on 2 pairs of transverse levers, rear, spring. A front suspension bulkhead is required every 40 to 60,000 kilometers, and this pleasure is not cheap. The upper ball joints are changed only together with the lever, the lower ones separately. The lower arm fails by 80 to 100,000 kilometers. A hole for the stabilizer strut breaks in it, so it is important to change the struts, as well as the stabilizer bushings, on time, every 30 to 40,000 kilometers. Similar rear suspension rubber bands last longer, up to 50 to 60,000 kilometers. Silent blocks are usually enough for the entire life of the levers. The twisting of the front suspension torsion bars must be adjusted at each toe and camber setting. The springs can sag, but even earlier they begin to squeak, and some owners prefer to replace the entire assembly rather than finding new plastic washers. Some cars know how to keep the ground clearance unchanged regardless of the loading of the rear. For this they are equipped with rear hydro-pneumatic shock absorbers with pumping, $600 each. The front wheel bearings are replaced only with the hubs, $300 part and $36 labor, and this has to be done every 100,000 kilometers. Steering. Steering gear Explorer, rack and pinion type, with hydraulic booster. Actually, the rail does not require attention. The power steering pump is also reliable. After the purchase, it is worth checking whether the anther of the steering shaft cardan has left its place. Otherwise, the hinge will not live up to the 100,000 kilometers allotted to it. At least 80 to 100,000 kilometers should work out the steering trapezoid rods and their tips. Outcome. The main feature of this car is American origin. On the one hand, it is a comfortable and dynamic machine for universal use. On the other hand, an all-wheel drive with mediocre off-road qualities, constantly sucking money out of the owner's wallet. However, this suits many, and if you are a fan of the overseas auto industry, look for a fresher copy. It still won't seem too expensive.